Jules Adolphe Aimé Louis Breton was born on May 1st, 1827, in Courrières, a small village in the Pas-de-Calais region of northern France. His father, Marie-Louis Breton, worked as a supervisor of land for a wealthy landowner, providing young Jules with intimate exposure to rural life that would profoundly influence his artistic vision. Tragedy struck early when his mother died when Jules was only 4 years old, leaving him to be raised by his father in the agricultural landscape that would later define his artistic identity. The young Breton's artistic talents emerged early, and his family recognized the need for proper training. His initial artistic education began in Belgium, where he studied under two significant masters who would shape his foundational approach to painting. Under Félix de Vigne and Baron Gustave Wappers, Breton was introduced to the rigorous disciplines of academic studio practice. These masters exposed him to the examples of the old masters and the rich traditions of the Flemish school, providing him with a solid grounding in classical techniques and compositional principles that would remain central to his work throughout his career. The Belgian training period was crucial in developing Breton's technical skills and his appreciation for traditional painting methods. Wappers, in particular, was known for his historical and romantic compositions, and under his guidance, Breton learned the importance of narrative clarity and emotional resonance in painting. This early exposure to academic rigor would later enable Breton to become what critics would call one of the primary transmitters of the beauty and idyllic vision of rural existence. In 1847, recognizing that his provincial training needed to be complemented by exposure to the artistic centres of Europe, Breton made the pivotal decision to move to Paris. He enrolled at the École des Beaux-Arts, hoping to perfect his artistic training in the capital's sophisticated artistic environment. In Paris, he entered the atelier of Michel Martin Drolling, a respected academic painter known for his religious and mythological subjects. The Parisian years proved transformative for the young artist. In Drolling's studio, Jules encountered not only rigorous academic training, but also exposure to contemporary artistic movements. He met and formed friendships with several of the realist painters, including François Bonvin and Gustave Brion. These relationships would prove crucial in shaping his artistic philosophy, as his early entries at the Paris Salon reflected their influence toward more contemporary and naturalistic subjects. Initially, Breton's work followed conventional academic paths, with his first efforts focusing on historical subjects. However, the influence of his realist contemporaries and his own deep connection to rural life began to pull him toward the peasant themes that would define his mature career. This period of artistic exploration and professional networking in Paris established the foundation for what would become one of the most successful artistic careers of the 19th century. By the 1850s, Jules Breton had found his distinctive voice as an artist, turning away from the historical subjects of his early career to focus on the rural landscapes and agricultural workers of his native northern France. This shift proved to be remarkably prescient, as Breton became one of the earliest painters to recognize the artistic and commercial potential of peasant themes. His decision to celebrate the beauty and nobility of rustic life positioned him at the forefront of a movement that would dominate much of 19th century art. Breton's approach to peasant subjects was revolutionary in its combination of realistic observation with idealized representation. As he described himself, he was the peasant who paints peasants, bringing an authentic understanding to his depictions of rural life. His paintings featured gleaners, harvesters, and communicants, subjects that became popular throughout the realistic art movement of the period. However, Breton's treatment elevated these everyday figures to an almost mythological status, creating what critics described as a timeless world where the workers of the field symbolically were linked with literary elegies that evoked their best qualities. The commercial success of Breton's peasant paintings was extraordinary, particularly among American collectors who developed an insatiable appetite for his work. His paintings resonated with American audiences, who saw in his idealized rural scenes a reflection of their own agrarian values and nostalgia for simpler times. Works like The Song of the Lark of 1884, which depicts a young peasant woman with scythe in hand standing at the edge of a field against a sunset, became iconic representations of rural nobility and were eagerly sought by wealthy American patrons. Breton was also an early champion of plein-air naturalism, working alongside Camille Corot to promote painting directly from nature. This commitment to naturalistic observation, combined with his academic training, created a unique synthesis that influenced a generation of landscape painters. His approach demonstrated that academic technique and naturalistic observation could be successfully combined, bridging the gap between traditional studio practice and the emerging plein air movement. In describing his own artistic philosophy, Breton wrote eloquently about his connection to rural subjects. In a letter to industrialist Henry Clay Frick, he explained his artistic vision. "It expresses a feeling I have frequently felt before the majestic simplicity and beauty of our rustic scenes when bathed in the last rays of the sun. Those daughters of our fields seem then to be transfigured. The very atmosphere surrounding them appears to me to be impregnated with a divine poetry." As his reputation grew, Breton began accepting students, becoming an influential teacher who passed on his synthesis of academic technique and naturalistic observation. His studio attracted aspiring artists who sought to learn his method of combining realistic subject matter with idealized treatment, creating what became known as the Breton approach to rural genre painting. Throughout his career, Breton achieved remarkable recognition from his peers. He gained acclaim from his first salon entry in 1849 and quickly earned recognition from established artists, including Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot, who praised his ability to capture both the physical reality and spiritual essence of rural life. His success represented what art historians have identified as a mid-century pivot point in French art, where realist and naturalist movements began to gain acceptance within the academic system. Breton's influence extended far beyond his own paintings. His approach to peasant subjects and his advocacy for plein-air naturalism helped establish rural genre painting as a legitimate and commercially viable artistic category. His work provided a model for artists seeking to combine social observation with aesthetic beauty, proving that contemporary rural life could serve as the basis for high art. When Jules Breton died on July 5, 1906, he left behind a legacy that had fundamentally transformed how artists and audiences viewed rural subjects. His synthesis of academic training, naturalistic observation, and poetic idealization had created a new category of painting that celebrated the dignity of agricultural labor while satisfying the aesthetic demands of sophisticated collectors. His influence on both French and American art continued well into the 20th century, establishing peasant genre painting as one of the defining movements of 19th century art. Jules Breton's skills are an inspiration to the great movement in art that is once again being appraised as the standard everyone can respect and admire. And finally, thank you for watching. And we also want to mention our growing ebook series on painters like Jules Breton, and his story will be coming soon, so follow the link below and discover these wonderful painters, fully illustrated, with instant download and ready to use.